Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you so much for coming. Please don't leave yet. If you have just 15 more minutes, I do ask that you stay with us. We do have a wonderful panel to talk about everything, not just what you saw, but really to share the lessons of what we are learning here today, but also what we have learned as a panel. As Sylvia Earle said, if it can happen in Belize, why can't it happen elsewhere? So I'd like to start off by just quickly introducing my panel and let you know who we have here tonight. It'll just be a few minutes, and we'd love to engage and get questions from the audience. So first we have Hilda Leonata. She is a conservation professional with over 2 decades of experience advancing community-led marine conservation in Indonesia through inclusive partnership, indigenous peoples engagement, and gender-responsive approaches. We have Hilda here. Next, we have Ms. Melanie McField. She is the founder and director of Healthy Reefs for Healthy People, which developed the first coral reef report card, and her life and work in Belize began in 1990 with her Peace Corps service as marine conservation was just getting underway. Melanie, say hi. And then finally, we have Chrisanne Hines. Chrisanne is an applied anthropologist with the Strong Coast Coastlines and People Project. Since 2019, she has worked with community partners in Belize to determine how we can advance nature-based solutions for coral reefs, mangroves, coastal ecosystems, and center community priorities in how coastal governance decisions are made. Chrisanne. So as we get started, first of all, I would love to open up the floor for any questions that anybody might have for any one of the panelists up here. There is, and I can't see anything or anybody, because it's so bright, but we do have somebody that is walking around. I think Megan is walking around with a mic. So if you do have a question, I'd love to just go ahead, raise your hand, and they'll come over to you with a mic. And I can't see, so you'll have to just shout. Okay, and just in case there were no questions, I do have a prepared question or two. Oh, question?
There are 2 questions. Oh, you're my question? Yeah. Oh, okay. Hi, guys. This is Les Kaufman. The Belize Blue Bond is wonderful, but how could it be made better? What do you think is missing? What are still the gaps?
What are the gaps? Well, yeah. We know enforcement is a major gap because there's been a lot of really well thought out policy, maneuvers like the protection of parrotfish and the development of all these marine protected areas. But when it comes down to it, it's the enforcement of all of these things. And that, again, is getting communities and all of the people behind it. So I think there's just constant education that's needed and outreach to make compliance better, so then you don't need as much enforcement with the strong arm.
Yeah, and I just want to build a little bit on that. And thanks, Les, for that question, because it is really about communities. And that is, I think, one of the biggest gaps in the deal that was made, which was, in the beginning, it wasn't as inclusive. It wasn't designed to be that way because of the negotiations that had to happen. But I think as this sort of these examples or these case studies are sent out, we'll see and we'll be able to better include communities at the very start as the negotiations are taking place to co-design the plans together. So I think that's more inclusion of communities from the very beginning would be one of the biggest gaps. Was there another question?
We've got one over here. Is it on? Yeah. What made you passionate about coral reefs?
All right. I am from Indonesia, where Indonesia is in the coral triangle, which means if you go deep down or if you put yourself in the water, then you will see huge diversity of coral reefs. One of the mega diversity, if you have Amazons on the forest, you have coral triangle areas in the oceans. So it's incredibly beautiful, and just like what the lady from the ocean mentions, like if you go down under and it's just only you and the oceans and the coral reefs, you'll just attune with the nature and with the higher entities. So you got so much rooted in your beings, in your existence. It's very personal to me, yeah. But I mean, like, as a biologist, I can also mention other ecosystem services that coral reef can provide and how important healthy coral reefs to Indonesia as an island countries. I hope that answers.
Sure. Oh, sure. Hi. So my passion for corals really started as an overall passion for the environment. So I was born in Jamaica, but raised in Florida. So I've always been surrounded by water and surrounded by spaces where corals exist. For the longest time, embarrassingly enough, I thought corals, like many people, were just rocks, right? You know, they're just there, they look like rocks, they're pretty to look at, but as I learned more about them, I started to realize that, wow, just like all the other environmental spaces that are a part of my home, corals are also a member of my family, really. So when I think about protecting coral reefs and just protecting the environmental spaces, I think about that as protecting a loved one, because without them, like, we won't exist. And vice versa when it comes to the environment, because we're not separate like people in nature. We're all a part of this global, like, society and this global system where we need each other.
Hi, I have a question. I really loved on your left side, somewhere here. So it was very nice to see this film. I was very, very inspired by it. I just have a little question, and I think that maybe the successful of this initiative and everything you have succeed in Belize was about also because the population is quite small and everybody mainly depends on the ocean for livelihoods, especially from Colombia, which is a 50 million population. So how do you think we can do something similar what you have done in Belize in a bigger population, in a bigger country that it's not mainly located in the coast, but it really relies on ocean?
Hello, I am from Indonesia, where the population is 270 million. So it's a big nation, like the fourth in all the world, I guess, rank of the total population. So we are pretty big, but again, marine conservation is quite strong because we're an island countries. We're an archipelagic. We have like 17,000 islands all over Indonesia, multi-ethnicity as well, like more than 1,000 ethnicity all around Indonesia. But I can relate so much with what happened in Belize because, again, just like what Julie mentions, it's all started with community. I mean, like, if the community feel the ownership, then they will definitely take care of it. Just like you're taking care of your own room because you feel you own your room. So if the community feel that they own the resources, the area, then they will take care of it. But when somebody grab it from them, then the disconnection, the alienations started. And then they will be very apathic. They don't really care so much about what happens, the degradations that happens around them. So I guess the work with community is crucial in doing marine conservations. And then asking for bigger stakeholders, governments, scientists, universities, private entities to then come along to be hand in hand working for a stronger marine conservation. I hope that, yeah, go ahead.
I would just add to that that you can also use your national media, you know, trying to get more stories on the news and trying to get even larger scale the economics, you know, of the country, tying into the ecosystem services of the reef, and it won't be as great as it is in Belize in terms of like percent GDP or anything like that. You're right, it will be much harder in a larger country that has a more industrial base, but tapping into the pride and, you know, the phenomena of these coral reefs being so magnificent and so globally threatened, but here's my country, we have one here. You know, like making people more aware of it and feel a love for it. I think that's an important step to start with.
Thank you.
Go ahead, throw out your question.
Hi, good evening. I'm Sarah from India, and I have a question with relating to bigger populations. Like you said, you need to make sure the community feels included in protecting the environment. But do you believe a top-down approach is more effective than a bottom-up approach, like top-down from the government? Or does it start with the communities, or is it more simultaneous?
Okay. Well, I'll go. So I can respond to that. So, I mean, I think regardless of whether it's a larger population or a more smaller population, I don't actually, no, I will definitively say I wouldn't advocate for a top-down approach. And my reason behind that is throughout my work, so I work for a more large-scale project. It's called Strong Coast. We work both in Belize, the US Virgin Islands, as well as in Florida down in Miami. And one of the things we've noticed across all of our research sites is while we do engage at both a top-down and bottom-up approach, where we have the more success and we have the more buy-in from the community and where we're able to make the most impact is when we actually consult and incorporate community priorities and needs from the very beginning, and not just thinking of it as oh, well, we have this work or we have this idea that we want to do. Now let's go vet it by the community partners or the community stakeholders. No, they're actually in the room, a part of that conversation, determining what the priorities are, determining what the needs are, vetoing often like what we as researchers or, you know, academics or practitioners like might think the community wants, but they're like, no, I see why you would come to that conclusion. However, the actual on-the-ground realities are this. So I think a bottom-up approach, or actually grassroots, where we're incorporating community stakeholders and community voices in the decision-making from the beginning is essential to any project having long-term success, especially when it comes to things relating to our coastal environments.
Thank you.
Absolutely everything that Chrisanne said, but I'm going to add a little bit to that, because at the same time, and you did mention it, it's not top down, but you're also engaging with the decision makers, the policy makers, and at the same time, it's multi-pronged, because you also need to engage with the private sector. You need to engage with the education, with the various industries, because these are things that impact the entire population, the entire community. So I know it might seem daunting to be able to do all of this, but that's where partnerships come in. You might not be able to do something yourself, but if you can partner with other organizations, other entities, private organizations, let them see the benefits and the returns that can come from these kinds of investments, that's how you then have sort of this tidal wave going forward, and it's a multi-pronged. You're engaging at every single level, but absolutely prioritizing the grassroots and the communities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see a question in the front. Oh, and in the back.
Hi, my name is Levi, and I'm from New Zealand. I just want to know a little bit more about Indonesia. What kind of initiatives do you know of that they're running to kind of get communities engaged with their environment, I guess? Because there's quite a lot of variation through Indonesia because of how wide it is, how many islands there are, how many people there are. Like, it's quite a big endeavor, really, to try and tackle that. So how do you go, like, where would you start in, you know, in such a widespread country?
Okay, thank you so much for the questions.
Sorry.
Then I will share you the stories about how we engage women actually, because the movie also emphasized a lot of the role of women in marine conservation. Then I would like to relate that with the work that I've done in Indonesia as well. So like in Indonesia, if you go to Papua, one of the nicest place to dive, one of the top destination diving sites, Raja Ampat, then you will find an indigenous people which is quite patriarchal, where the landowners and marine owners are usually held by men. So then when we came there, we realized that they already have a certain practice, a local ecological knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge, which is called SASI, a spatial and temporal closure of a certain area of marine for a sustainable harvest. Usually it's a harvest of a sedentary biota or less mobile species, such as sea cucumber, trochus, or lobster. Usually SASI are managed by men. And then when we came, we work with the men to implement SASI, but then the result is not as sustained as we wish to see how it sustained. And then the women comes along and asks us again, like, can you also facilitate us to have a SASI area and manage a SASI? And then we talk with the elders, we talk with the church, we talk with the village government to ask for a permission whether it is possible for a women's group to have a SASI area, to be granted to manage a SASI area. And then they were granted. And then we can see also like the difference how women and men divide profits after SASI opening and when they harvest. The women's, just like the movie said, is more caregiving, is more mindful for the well-being of the family and the communities. So most of the harvest goes back to the community. All people in the village benefiting from what the group has done. So then after 10 years of implementations, the clan owner, who is a male, provide the groups more area for them to manage, because all benefiting from the harvest of the the SASI practice. So then again, we realized that this can be done, that women breaking the law of patriarchal and indigenous customary way cannot manage a certain area, but they can now. Then we replicate this, and when we are replicating this, it's not us who talk to the other villages to replicate and to see how this group has managed, but it's the women champions who goes to the villagers and speak for themselves, for themselves, and give testimony. And so the other village also follow suits to other groups. So then I can see that how community can be in the forefront, and women especially can also be in the forefront of doing marine conservations, but also yet bringing in the benefits of a thriving ecosystem to the table, to the family welfare and for their well-being in the village. I hope that answers your questions.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jane. I lead the marine program for the Nature Conservancy in Papua New Guinea. We're located at the northernmost tip of Papua New Guinea, about 2 degrees from the equator. So my question is around how the private sector, say the NGOs and the civil society organizations in Belize, what was the key thing or the one thing that they did to come together rather than operate in silos, which is quite common in a lot of small island developing states. And I've seen that in Papua New Guinea, where the government is really not that interested in working or engaging with NGOs to leverage the support, because they are working with the local communities on the ground. So they don't get that information that could support decision making that is relevant and contextualized. So what is one key thing that happened in Belize that brought all these different interested parties together so that you can bring about that positive outcome?
So I think, and it's going to be different in every country. At the end of the day, it all comes down to money. Everything comes down to the power of the dollar. And in Belize, because we are so heavily dependent on tourism, anywhere between, depending on what year, between 40 to 50% of the GDP is tourism. And in Belize, it's sustainable tourism, and I know, Lisa in the video said it was an oxymoron. And yes and no. But the thing is that the country is selling a product, and a product that is nature-based. All of Belize's tourism is nature-based. So from the private sector, in that sense, a lot of them, a lot of the companies they actually benefited from a lot of the various conservation initiatives that have been and continue to be implemented in Belize, because these are things that can be marketed and can be sold. Today, around the world, more than ever, people are conscious of what they're buying, what they're purchasing. And that includes whether it is, the food that they're purchasing, or whether it's the trips and where they're going, the clothing that they're buying. So capitalizing on that, because that is where, we start talking about profits. If people will pay more for a more sustainable product, that represents a higher return for private sector and for companies. So finding those things. So looking at where you can have sort of like a win-win, where by working together and partnering together, you're actually bringing in more money, better returns for those private companies. They will want to invest more in those nature-based solutions, nature-based products, things like that.
I would just add that also it doesn't happen overnight. This is back to the early 90s and what Janet had said in there about Hol Chan and that first example that everyone could see the actual benefits of that park, not just for the fish and the corals, but for the community. The tourists got out of the water and were just crazy amazed at how much life was there. All the other communities started saying, we want a Hol Chan. We want our own park like that, so people can have a wonderful place to go. That's tied back to money and economy, but it's also, it gave their kids a place to go for the field trips at school that was close by. And if you pick the right spot, you can have these wonderful places dotted around the country. And I think that having something that you could see with your own eyes, and people moved around the country and went to look at Hol Chan, and they were like, oh yeah, we're going to do that off Placencia and have Laughing Bird Key. That just helped it. It's kind of like a snowball effect. So getting a good start is important.
Hello, and thank you so much for the movie and the panel. My name is Vicki Nichols-Goldstein, and I'm with the Inland Ocean Coalition. And I think this blue bond is great, and all of the conservation efforts that Belize has gone through over at least my lifetime that I've seen, it's remarkable. What are the plans to ensure that the conservation gains that you are getting remain in place? Is there some kind of a long-term planning regime or commissions or committees to ensure that you guys are staying on track?
Part of the negotiation before the deal was closed was to ensure that the entire, all the commitments and all the hundreds of pages of clauses that went with it had to pass through our parliament, which meant that it wasn't just the government of today, but it was through the entire House and all of Parliament, so the opposition and the administration had to agree on everything. So it then turned into legislation and a bill. So it's not something that could get overthrown, let's say, with a change in government. This is something that the entire country would have to change. So that was, that probably took the longest, was to get that, and the engagement that was happening across all levels of politics at the time.
I've got another question over here. Well, in your whole career, what was the worst, like the most depressing moment, and the best one, like a milestone record sort of moment?
The depressing one came to me really quickly. Sorry, that was just recently because it was this 2023, 24 bleaching, like, we're getting a little complacent. We've seen a lot of bleaching events, and then, but this last one was just so bad. So despite all of this good effort, there's only so much heat stress coral reefs can take. So I think we're going to be doing a lot of facing that at this conference this week, and we just have to, I think there's no one solution for coral reefs, but, climate action fast is a big part of it, along with everything else, with the fisheries and the mitigation of other forms of pollution. So that's on my mind. And the wins, the good things are like from the oil, that fight where we, had the referendum. The government tried, we didn't get the whole thing in it, but they tried to nitpick, and we wanted to have a real referendum that was legally binding, and the signatures were not right. People had signed their voter card like 20 years earlier, and their signature wasn't exactly the same, so they threw it out. So that was a people's referendum that was held, and it was not binding, but the government came around because that 96% of people supporting it is real, and those votes, will be cast accordingly. So that was very powerful feeling, and it was fun. So,
Oh, okay, I can go next. So very similar, the most depressing moment did instantly pop into my head. So at Laughing Bird Key, it is a protected area that's in Belize off the coast of Placencia, more in southern Belize. So when I first started my work, I couldn't swim. Eventually, obviously, I learned how to swim because I do a lot of work in the water, right? And I remember during the recent bleaching event, I was like, okay, I can go in the water. I don't have to wear the 50,000,001 life vest and have everyone watching to make sure I don't drown. And there was this one elk horn that reminded me of a chicken nugget. It was the very first coral I really saw in the wild and was able to interact with. And I went to it, and it was completely bleached, and it was dead. So that was very depressing. I did come out the water. There were tears shed. It was a very cathartic, therapeutic moment because kind of everyone was really taking in how kind of rapidly the environment and the corals that we work with can die, and that one simple the rising temperatures can change it. And I think when it comes to my win and kind of the most happy moments is anytime I get to be working with the actual coral restoration practitioners, where I get to just be more in the background and a fly on the wall. So as an anthropologist, we do a lot of what's known as participant observation, where I just get to sit around and hang out and see what's going around. I joke around and tell people I have a degree in being nosy, because often I get to just I'm people watching, right? And it's just this very refreshing feeling just to be able to be even in the space and just a part of their energy and just seeing the passion that they have when it comes to their work, and seeing them just taking care of their own homes because they want to ensure that it's not just good for future generations, but it's good for now, and just the amazing passion that they bring to it. It's very invigorating, and it's okay, it's a good reminder of why we do the work that we do. Because there's always, even with all the sadness and with all the rapid environmental changes and climate change that's happening, there's always positive, and there's always something we can do about it.
As for me, we also have the bleaching event as well, so I can relate to that. But I guess for Indonesians, as an Indonesian, I think the one that is depressing for me currently is the current development that is so much in favor to extractive industries. Since the demand of renewable energy, nickel demand is very high, and Indonesia is one of the biggest producer of nickel. However, we haven't got into that technology that is quite friendly enough when you extract nickel and you can manage the waste. So in one of our working sites in the eastern part of Indonesia, where the area is quite pristine, the government is thinking of having to open up a new concessions for a mining, nickel mining in the area, and it will threaten the marine protected area in the area. So hopefully there is no Indonesian intelligence here, but hopefully after the current president stepped down, we can banish that regulations. But yeah, meanwhile also consolidating forces from the others to somehow manage the mining or reject the mining concessions. I guess that is the depressing one, how to be upfront and having a conflict with the higher power and have a conflict of interest. As for the one that brings me smile and a winning experience, I guess how to accompany women's group or women's, especially from remote area, isolated area, who initially were not there to speak in front of the public, very timid, very reserved, very shy, up to seeing a woman, the very same woman, to be able to speak in a public event with a sparkle in her eyes. That brings joy to my life, and money cannot beat that feeling. Thank you.
Okay, that was a wonderful question, and I'll actually close with that question because I realize it's getting late. But I just so very quickly, for me, probably the most depressing thing is going diving a couple years ago and not seeing any fish. It was like the reef was like, where are the fish that we always see? It was shocking and sad. And I'm hoping that when I go back to that site, I will see that some of the efforts have gone in, will bring them back, but I haven't seen that yet. The thing that has been, I guess, the most impactful, that I feel has been most impactful, which is what gives me greatest joy, is that November of this year will make 5 years since we closed on the Blue Bonds deal. And in less than 5 years, the amount of funds that have come back into the country to support marine conservation, support hundreds of jobs, tens of millions of dollars have gone back into projects with private sector, with NGOs, with communities, and to see the impact that that has had in a very short period of time, it really inspires me and makes me very hopeful for the future. And these are funds that will be coming in really in perpetuity the way it's designed. So that is probably what gives me the most hope. I'd like to, first of all, thank all of you for staying. I mean, it was a long film, 85 minutes. You stayed through it. I really appreciate, we all appreciate you being here, staying here with us and having this engaging discussion with all of you. We're here. It's not that I'm just being very respectful of the conference organizers. So because we do need to kind of end things for this evening. But we're here. Feel free to come and talk to us and ask us any more questions. As for the film, the producers are continuing to look for opportunities to be able to screen this, whether it be at academic institutions or any organization that they feel they could actually utilize and actually benefit from the messages that are being sent in the film. Please find me. My name's Julie Robinson. You'll find it in the app. You'll find me anywhere. Just get in contact with me. We'd love to be able to screen this and get it out as much as possible. Eventually, it is going around to various film festivals. We're hoping that next year it will hit PBS in the United States, and eventually a streaming platform. But for now, the only way it is available is to really work with the directors and the producers to be able to host a screening like we've done here. So I want to thank Megan, who is somewhere there right now, I can't see you, and ICRS for really allowing us to be able to screen this here tonight. So thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.